Marilyn Monroe hugged Sammy on set. The studio's panic changed Hollywood forever. 20th Century Fox Studios, Los Angeles, March 8, 1960. 2:17 p.m. The set of Let's Make Love was in full swing. Marilyn Monroe had just finished a take. The crew was resetting. Director George Cukor was reviewing the footage. Everything was routine. Everything was normal. And then Sammy Davis Jr. walked onto the soundstage. He'd come to visit Marilyn. They were friends, had been for years. So when Sammy arrived, Marilyn's face lit up like a Christmas tree. She ran toward him, arms open, and did something that seemed completely innocent, completely natural, completely harmless. She hugged him. A simple embrace between two friends, 3 seconds, maybe 4. Nothing romantic, nothing scandalous. Just Marilyn Monroe, the biggest female star in the world, hugging Sammy Davis Jr., one of the most famous black entertainers in America. But what happened in the next 17 minutes would expose the ugliest truth about Hollywood in 1960. Would end careers. Would reveal a system so terrified of interracial contact that a simple hug could shut down a major studio production. And would ultimately change the rules of what was allowed on a movie set forever. This is the untold story of the day Marilyn Monroe hugged Sammy Davis Jr., the panic that followed, the phone calls that were made, the threats that were issued, and how one moment of genuine human affection became the catalyst that forced Hollywood to finally confront its own racism. Let's rewind. Let's go back 6 years. Because the friendship between Marilyn and Sammy didn't start on a movie set. It started in a place where both of them felt equally invisible, the Mocambo nightclub, West Hollywood. Marilyn Monroe was already famous, but she wasn't being taken seriously. Hollywood saw her as a blonde bombshell, a sex symbol, nothing more. She was fighting to be seen as a real actress, as someone with depth and talent beyond her appearance. That same year, Sammy Davis Jr. was fighting his own battle. He was one of the most talented performers in America, but most venues still operated under segregation. He could perform at the Mocambo, but he couldn't sit in certain sections, couldn't eat at certain restaurants, couldn't stay at certain hotels. One night, after Sammy's show at the Mocambo, Marilyn came backstage to meet him. She'd been in the audience, mesmerized by his performance. "Mr. Davis," she said, extending her hand. "That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen." Sammy was surprised. Marilyn Monroe knew who he was? "Miss Monroe, thank you. That means a lot coming from you. Please, call me Marilyn. Only if you call me Sammy." They talked for an hour that night. About performing. About the pressure. About feeling like the world saw only one part of them and refused to see the rest. "People look at me and see blonde hair and red lips," Marilyn said. "They don't see that I read Dostoevsky, that I want to do Shakespeare, that I'm more than what they think I am. People look at me and see my skin color before they see my talent," Sammy replied. "They don't see that I've been performing since I was 3, that I can sing, dance, act, play instruments. They just see Negro." "We're both fighting to be seen as human, aren't we?" Marilyn said quietly. "Yeah, we are." From that night on, they were friends. Real friends. Not Hollywood friends. Not publicity friends. Real friends who understood each other's pain. They'd call each other late at night when the loneliness was too much. When the pressure of being a symbol instead of a person became unbearable. Marilyn would tell Sammy about the studio executives who treated her like property. Sammy would tell Marilyn about the racism he faced every day. "Sometimes I wish I could just disappear," Marilyn told him once. "Just stop being Marilyn Monroe and be Norma Jean again. Nobody expecting anything, nobody watching." "I get that," Sammy said, "but the world needs Marilyn Monroe, even if it's hard to be her. The world needs Sammy Davis Jr. too. Then I guess we're both stuck being symbols. At least we can be human with each other." By 1960, their friendship was well known in Hollywood circles, but carefully managed. They never appeared together publicly, never were photographed together. Because their studios knew the truth. America in 1960 was not ready to see a white woman and a black man as friends. Not publicly. Not where everyone could see. March 8, 1960. Sammy was in Los Angeles for meetings about his upcoming film Ocean's 11. Marilyn was shooting Let's Make Love at Fox. They'd talked on the phone the night before. "Come visit the set tomorrow," Marilyn had said. "I'd love to see you." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "Sammy, it's 1960. We can be friends on a movie set." "Can we?" "We should be able to." So Sammy came. He checked in with security, was given a visitor's badge, walked onto soundstage 14 where Marilyn was filming. The moment Marilyn saw him, she lit up. Genuine joy. The kind of happiness that couldn't be faked. "Sammy!" she called out. She ran toward him, arms open, and she hugged him. A real hug. The kind of hug you give someone you're genuinely happy to see. For 3 seconds, the world was normal. 2 friends greeting each other. And then Sammy saw the faces around them. The crew had frozen. Every single person on that soundstage had stopped what they were doing. Cameramen, grips, lighting technicians, makeup artists, script supervisors. All staring. Not with curiosity, with horror. George Cukor, the director, put down his script. His face had gone pale. One of the producers, Jerry Wald, stood up from his chair so fast it fell backward. And then the whispers started. "Did you see that?" She hugged him. "Someone needs to... Where's security?" Marilyn, still holding Sammy's hand, seemed oblivious. "I'm so glad you came. How are rehearsals going for Ocean's 11? But Sammy had stopped listening. He was watching the room, watching the panic spread like a virus. Jerry Wald rushed over. His face was red. His voice was low but urgent. "Miss Monroe, Mr. Davis, I need to speak with both of you, immediately, in private." "Jerry, what's wrong?" Marilyn asked, confused. "Now, Marilyn." They followed him off the soundstage into a small office. The moment the door closed, Wald exploded. "What the hell were you thinking?" Marilyn was genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? You hugged him, in front of 50 crew members, in front of cameras." "Jerry, Sammy is my friend. I don't care if he's the Pope. You cannot be seen embracing a Negro man on a studio lot." The words hung in the air like poison. Sammy felt his face burn. Not with embarrassment, with rage. "Excuse me?" Sammy said quietly. Wald turned to him. "Mr. Davis, with all due respect, you need to leave. Immediately." "With all due respect," Sammy replied, his voice ice cold. "I was invited here by Miss Monroe. I don't care. You being here is creating a situation." "A situation? I'm creating a situation by existing?" "Don't twist my words." "I'm not twisting anything. You just told me I can't be on this lot because Marilyn hugged me. Because we're friends. Because apparently, in 1960, a white woman and a black man can't be photographed together without it being a scandal." Marilyn grabbed Sammy's arm. "This is insane, Jerry. We're friends, that's all." "That's not all," Wald was nearly shouting now. "Do you understand what will happen if photos of that embrace get out? We're a studio in the middle of a major production with the biggest female star in the world. We have investors. We have distribution deals in the South. You have racism," Marilyn said coldly. "That's what you have. Marilyn, please try to understand." "No, Jerry. You try to understand. Sammy Davis Jr. is one of my closest friends. He's a brilliant performer. He's a good person. And I will hug him whenever I want to hug him. Not on a Fox lot, you won't." The threat was clear. Marilyn's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm reminding you that you have a contract, and that contract includes a morality clause. And if you continue to engage in behavior that could damage the studio's reputation, hugging my friend is immoral behavior? In the eyes of half this country?" "Yes." Sammy had heard enough. He stood up. "Marilyn, I'm leaving. I don't want to cause you problems." "Sammy, no." "I have to. But this?" He looked at Wald. This is exactly why nothing changes. Because studios like you are so terrified of losing money that you'd rather enforce racism than do what's right. He walked out, left the office, left the soundstage. And as he walked through the Fox lot toward the exit, he could feel eyes on him. Everyone had heard what happened. Everyone was watching. Back in the office, Marilyn was furious. "You just humiliated one of the kindest people I know. I protected this studio. You protected racism." "Marilyn, please. I want it in writing." Wald stopped. "What?" "I want it in writing. From the studio. From Daryl Zanuck himself. I want a letter stating that I am not allowed to have black friends. That I am forbidden from embracing them. That my personal relationships are subject to studio approval based on race." "Marilyn, you're being unreasonable." "Am I? Because if this is studio policy, I want it documented. I want my lawyers to see it. I want the world to see what Fox Studios really stands for." Wald went silent. Because they both knew that if such a letter existed, if it became public, the scandal would be massive. "That's what I thought," Marilyn said quietly. "You want to enforce racism, but you don't want to admit you're doing it." She walked out, went straight to her dressing room, called her lawyer. Within 2 hours, 3 things happened. First, Marilyn's lawyer sent a letter to Fox Studios demanding clarification on the morality clause and whether it prohibited interracial friendships. Second, Sammy's lawyer sent a letter demanding an apology for his treatment on the Fox lot. Third, someone leaked the story to the press. By that evening, newspapers were calling. By the next morning, the headline was everywhere. Marilyn Monroe forbidden from hugging Sammy Davis Jr. on Fox lot. Studio panic over interracial embrace exposes Hollywood racism. Monroe demands explanation. Am I banned from having black friends? The scandal was massive. Bigger than Fox had feared. Bigger than anyone expected. Civil rights groups called for boycotts of Fox films. Liberal Hollywood stars publicly supported Marilyn and Sammy. Southern theaters threatened to pull Fox movies if the studio promoted race mixing. Fox was in crisis mode. Daryl Zanuck, head of the studio, called an emergency meeting. Present were studio executives, lawyers, and representatives from the publicity department. "How did this happen?" Zanuck demanded. Jerry Wald explained. The hug, the panic, the confrontation. "And you told them they couldn't be friends?" "I told them they couldn't be photographed together on studio property." "Why?" Because of the implications." "The implications," Zanuck said slowly, "are that we look like racist bastards. Because we are racist bastards." Silence. "Here's what's going to happen," Zanuck continued. "First, we're issuing a public statement apologizing to both Miss Monroe and Mr. Davis. Second, we're clarifying that Fox Studios does not prohibit interracial friendships. Third, Jerry, you're being reassigned, effective immediately. Sir, you created this disaster. You're done." On March 12, 1960, Fox Studios issued a formal apology. It was unprecedented. A major Hollywood studio publicly admitting it had enforced racist policies. The apology changed everything. Other studios began quietly revising their, quote, morality clauses. The unspoken rules about interracial contact on movie sets started to crumble. It didn't end racism in Hollywood. Not even close. But it was a crack in the wall. A moment when the system was forced to confront its own ugliness publicly. Marilyn and Sammy remained friends until her death in 1962. After she died, Sammy was one of the few people who spoke openly about how lonely she'd been. How misunderstood. "Marilyn was the bravest person I knew," Sammy said in a 1963 interview. "She risked her career to defend our friendship. She demanded that Hollywood see me as a human being, not a symbol. That's courage." In 1989, a year before his death, Sammy was asked about the Fox Studios incident. What do you remember most about that day? Sammy smiled, that sad, knowing smile. I remember Marilyn's face when she saw me. Pure joy, no calculation, no performance, just happiness. And then I remember watching that joy turn to anger when she realized the studio was trying to tell her who she could love, who she could be friends with. She fought for you. She fought for what was right. That's who Marilyn was. People think of her as this fragile blonde. But she was steel underneath. She saw injustice and she fought it. Even when it cost her. That's the untold legacy. Not just the performances, not just the fame, but the moments when people chose friendship over safety, when they chose humanity over career, when they chose what was right over what was easy. Marilyn Monroe hugged Sammy Davis Jr. on a movie set in 1960. The studio panicked, tried to enforce racist policies, tried to separate two friends because the world wasn't ready to see them together. But Marilyn refused, demanded accountability, forced Hollywood to confront its own racism publicly. And in doing so, she changed the rules, made it a little bit easier for the next person, the next friendship, the next moment of genuine human connection. That's courage, that's friendship, that's the legacy that matters. A 3-second hug that changed Hollywood forever.